is gonna be funky.
Yeah, it is, y'all.
This is gonna be funky.
That's right.
Funky.
I'm looking at my watch, it's time to go. Am I headed down the right path? I don't know, but I hope so. Where do we go from here? You know tomorrow ain't promised, nor the afterlife. This moment's what you got and the time is right to live without fear. Because it's time to seek your wildest dreams. Though impossible it seems, you're never too old to be what you might have been. Some people try to keep you down, wear a frown. They say keep your 2 feet on the ground. But if you don't run the race, how you ever gonna win? I just ain't quite sure how we got here. And we pray to the almighty dollar. Our identities disappear as our consciousness grows smaller. It's the rain pouring down on me, won't drown in this oppressive sea. The undercurrent's trying to submerge me, but my spirit's strong, I'm floating on. The rain can't wash away the goals I strive for day to day. I'm told I can't go out and play till the sun comes back and the rain is gone.
Rain, rain, go away, don't come back no other day.
Duty Bug wants to come out and play, and that's why I moved to LA.
Welcome to the Friends of Dan Music Podcast. I'm Dan Miles. You've been listening to the music of Nate Morton. That was from a CD he released in 2006 called Playground Philosophy. I first became aware of Nate when Lee Sklar mentioned him on the show. If you heard that episode, you might remember that towards the end I asked Lee if he ever found himself secretly wishing that one of his top caliber drummer friends like Jeff Porcaro or Russ Kunkel was playing on a session with him instead of a lesser player he might have gotten stuck with. He said that did sometimes happen, but more often than not, he was pleasantly surprised by the new musicians he worked with, and he specifically mentioned Nate, whom he met in the band at the Latin Grammys, and who apparently really blew him away with both his drumming and his personality. Nate has recorded and toured with well-known artists like Chaka Khan, Paul Stanley of Kiss, Natalie Cole, and Vanessa Carlton, but he's probably best known as a drummer in the house band on the popular NBC show The Voice. Unlike American Idol, whose claim to fame was its practice of ridiculing the less talented applicants and taking a cruel delight in publicly crushing their dreams, The Voice has adopted a much more positive tone. Right from the start, every contestant has real talent, and even in defeat, they're always treated with courtesy and respect. Rather than using has-beens or never-weres to assess the talent, The Voice instead uses coaches who are all current chart-topping artists in their own right, which makes them very well qualified to advise singers and help them develop their craft in a meaningful way. The 4 voice coaches are Adam Levine of Maroon 5, CeeLo Green of Gnarls Barkley, country artist Blake Shelton, and pop diva Christina Aguilera. Christina and CeeLo will be unavailable next season due to touring obligations and will be temporarily replaced by Usher and Shakira, which should be interesting. One thing that won't change, however, is the man behind the drum kit. Every vocalist who's appeared on the show to date has had the good fortune of being supported by this versatile and supremely talented musician, and I'm willing to bet there hasn't been a single complaint from a contestant, producer, or fan of the show in the drumming department. So without further ado, let's get him on the line. Joining me on the phone from Los Angeles, California, is Nate Morton. Welcome.
Hey, Dan, how are you?
I'm quite well, thank you.
Good.
Well, you just completed the 3rd season of The Voice, and it's been such a success that NBC is already gearing up for your 4th season, just a couple short months from now. I know the final rounds of the show are broadcast live, but in the earlier part of the season, when you're pre-recording, about how far ahead of the air dates are you taping those?
We get in there and we do the rehearsals for the first phase of the show, which is the blind auditions. We do the rehearsals for those and shoot the blind auditions. Then we have a very brief break, about a week or so, and then we kind of go straight into the same cycle for the battle rounds. And then we finish up shooting the blinds and the battles about 6 to 8 weeks in advance of when the show actually hits the air.
Well, that's interesting because I think when we watch it at home, that very first blind audition, you've actually done all the blind auditions, all the battle rounds. It's all in the can a month and a half before the show even starts to air. Because I had no idea how big of a gap there was in there.
Well, if you think about it, there are hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of footage because the live show is limited because it's obviously a 2-hour show, and it has to go live, and it has to start at a certain time, and it has to end at a certain time. Whereas with the blinds and with the battles, we play the song, and then the coaches, offer their feedback and their input and so on. Sometimes they argue about who does what or who gets what contestant and so on. So it's sort of an infinite day of shooting, and then they take multiple infinite days of shooting back, and then they have to edit those things down into, the episodes that you see on the air. So
right.
that just takes a lot of time.
Let me explain a little bit what we're talking about to the audience who might not be familiar with The Voice. There's an innovation, which we've been talking about, the blind audition, in which the studio audience and the viewers at home can see the contestants performing, but the coaches can't. The 4 of them have to sit with their backs to the stage and pick their teams based solely on the voices they hear with no visual information to influence them. At home we see the full performances of most, not all, but most of the singers who are chosen, and we also see some performances by singers who sadly are not chosen. But as you were saying, it sounds like there are a lot of performances that we never see at all. Do you actually watch the show when it airs?
I catch it when I can. It's interesting. I'm ashamed to admit that I actually don't watch it every episode,
right.
In part because I'm living it.
Right.
It's like when I spend 12 or 14 hours a day shooting the show and working on the show, I don't necessarily want to race home and then watch myself on the show.
I'm actually not surprised at all to hear you say that. The only reason I sort of qualified it is if you watched all the blind auditions, you'd have a sense of how many make it to the air and how many don't. I mean, it's like, how many do you think they just go, well, that's not... I guess if a person isn't chosen, if they decide to air it because it's kind of interesting, to see the process the judges go through and the sort of notes they give them as they exit, that's kind of interesting. And also, if every single performance the person's chosen, there's no real suspense for the viewers at home. But on the other hand, I just wonder, since you do spend a lot of time rehearsing with these contestants, how much of that just goes to nothing?
Well, that's an interesting question that no one has actually ever asked before. Let's see. Last season, I feel like each coach, we said 64, we learned and prepared for about 120 plus 27, about 150 performances.
Wow.
Were learned and prepared for. So we had basically, if you want to visualize a line of 150 singers down the sidewalk. I mean, it wasn't literally that, obviously, but, that's what we had prepared.
Yeah.
And so then we basically begin working our way through, and obviously it concludes when all the coaches have filled their teams. Mm-hmm. And as you pointed out, they do need a certain number of no's, because, like you said, suspense. And then sometimes some of those no's are, interesting stories. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the interaction that follows the performance is interesting. So those do make it into the show. But yes, your point is a good one, which is that we do learn a fair number of songs that either don't make it to air or sometimes don't even get played. There are times where each coach has filled their teams before we have actually played through all the performances. So sadly, there are some people who we prepared for who not only does their performance not make air, but they actually don't even make it to the stage, which is a bummer,
Definitely.
And I don't know. I mean, people far more qualified than me make the decisions of the order of, how we perform and so on. Mm-hmm. But, that is kind of a sad sort of reality of what the show is.
Well, what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and listen to one of these blind auditions. I picked this one for a few reasons. First, the arrangement has you starting the song by yourself. Usually the audience waits until the singer finishes at least a half a verse or so before they start yelling out their support. But in this case, you started bashing out the beat with such authority that the crowd started cheering before the singer had even come in.
Oh, my goodness.
Second, I picked this one for the story behind it. It kind of ties in what you were saying about being towards the end of the audition process when some of the coaches have met their quotas and they don't have any spots left on their teams, and your odds of getting on the show are greatly reduced. This guy was chosen, but CeeLo hit his button so late in the performance that the singer didn't realize it at first. So, after psychologically accepting the fact that he wasn't going to be on the show, he had this moment of realization that resulted in a very genuine emotional outburst. It was probably one of the most memorable moments from the audition phase of season 3. And the third reason I picked it is I think it nicely demonstrates the sound of your drums, particularly your toms. Because most drummers have a pretty wide gap between their final tom and their kick drum, but it sounds like you filled in like every drum size in between. It's like,
Yes. Well, what I kind of do is I just try to put enough stuff around me that kind of any direction I fling a stick, I'm bound to hit something.
That's a good strategy. Well, your toms have a really nice deep resonance to them that I find distinctive and one of the signature aspects of your playing on the show. And this song also has a lot of breakdowns, so your fills are really easy to hear. Well, the name of the singer is Cody Ballou.
Mm-hmm.
He actually went pretty far in the competition, particularly considering how close he came to not even getting on the show.
True.
So let's check it out. Take it away, Cody.
But you got to come home with me. I've got some good old loving and I got some more in store. When I get through throwing it on you, you got to come back for more. Boys and things that come by the dozen, that ain't nothing but a drugstore load. Hey, little thing, let me light your candle, cause the mama, I'm sure the henna now is around. Action speaks louder than words, and I'm a man of great experience. Another man, but I can love you better than him. Nah, 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 take my head. Don't be afraid, I'm gonna prove every word I say. I'm advertising love for free, so you can bless your hair with me now. Was I come along and down by the dozen? That ain't nothing but a chance in love. Hey, little thing, let me light your candle, cause mama, I'm sure the henna now is around. Hey, the henna now. Oh yeah. But you got to come home with me. I've got some good old love, I got some more in store. When I get through throwing on you, you better come on back for more now. Was I come along and down by the dozen? That ain't nothing but a chance in love. Hey, little thing, let me light your candle, cause mama, I'm sure the henna now is around. Hey, the henna now. Oh yeah. Cause mama, I'm sure the henna now is around. Hey, 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 so hard to henna now. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Baby, a good loving, need your loving. Oh yeah, good loving, a good loving. I need your loving, yeah.
Well, it sounds like you and the band had a lot of fun doing that one. Right after the show airs, all of the winning performances, so to speak, are released as singles on iTunes. Since the singers only get 90 seconds to audition, and as we all just heard, these recordings run quite a bit longer than that, it's safe to assume they're not the actual performances we've seen on TV. So at what point in the process are you recording these tracks? You mentioned the blind auditions end. Do you just figure out who's been selected to a team and go and record them, or have you already done it prior to that?
Well, as I mentioned before, how the blind auditions production takes place and the battle rounds take place, Basically, as soon as we shoot the blind auditions, we know, in the case of that season, which 16 times 4, 64 songs we'll need to record to have available simultaneous with the airing of those episodes.
Sure.
So basically, we'll take those 64 songs and we will make 3.5-minute arrangements of them for iTunes, full-length arrangements of them for iTunes, and then we'll go through, we'll book like 5 days, for example, of sessions where we're recording between 10 and 12 songs a day, or I guess more than that. In that case, it would have been 6 days of sessions, and bang out all of those in 6 consecutive, 10 to 12 hour studio session days, and then usually there's a small break, and then we're back into the battle rounds, and we do the same thing again. We go through the whole TV production cycle of the battle rounds.
Now, are these competitors tracking with you, or are you just laying down an instrumental bed?
It's a whole process that takes place in multiple studios with multiple engineers and editing and mixing. Well, there's one person over it all, but it is operated like a well-oiled machine at this point, and the timing of it is such that, generally speaking, well, it actually varies. Sometimes we will have recorded all of the tracks, and then at another separate time, they'll bring in all the singers, and all the singers will come and track their vocals. Other times, we're tracking simultaneously. So there are days when we'll go in, and we'll be booked to record our first song starting at 10 o'clock. The singer of that song will be booked in a studio next door to sing their lead vocal on that song at noon. So it'll be staggered, let's say, like that, throughout the day. The singer is scheduled for 2 hours after we're scheduled to do the song. So as the day goes by, essentially, we start tracking at 10. We're done tracking, overdubs, everything, and then it actually gets like a mix and like everything like that, and then it is taken on a drive to the adjoining studio where the singer shows up to sing on it, just like that. So, in that situation, we're under a bit of a time crunch because obviously you don't want to back up the singers, and we want to keep, flowing through.
Right.
So yes. But then other times, like, like, for example, we just did a recording session yesterday where we recorded, some of the material that's actually going to be for season 4. And those contestants aren't actually back in town yet. But when they come back in town to continue production of season 4, then they will record, their tracks.
Well, this is probably going to make you laugh, but I'll do it anyways. Let me show you how naive I am. I actually thought, as we were watching the blind auditions, that you were probably only taping 2 or 3 weeks ahead. I thought that as we were watching them, you're like, yeah, you recorded that one like 3 weeks ago, and now you're working on the ones we're going to see. It's because I have some friends who are TV composers. I won't mention the show yet because it's an upcoming guest, and I don't want to jinx it. But, literally they get a cut of the TV show, and they have like 2 or 3 weeks till it airs. In fact, Alf Clausen was here, and he was talking about how he does The Simpsons. He gets the show, he has like about 3 weeks to score it, and then it airs. But you're right. Now I think about it, this is pretty complex. I was going to ask you this later, but let me go ahead and ask you right now. Obviously, the studio audience knows all the results way beforehand. How do you prevent them from leaking those results? Do they have to sign waivers? Or are they on the honor system? Or
Dan, you see, if it doesn't take place on my drum riser, I usually don't know the answer. But
well, let me ask you this. Do you have Carson Daly's phone number? Just kidding, man.
No, with regard to the contestants, or rather the audience members, they're basically told not to go and disclose the results. I don't know if they actually have to sign a waiver or not, to be perfectly honest with you. Although I will tell you this, I worked on another TV show once, and it had a reality element to it, and part of working on that TV show required that I sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and the penalty for breaching the non-disclosure agreement was $5 million.
Ouch.
And I joked with, me and several people working on the show, we used to joke, like, if we had $5 million, we wouldn't be here. It's like you could that figure could be $5 million or it could be $5 trillion because your chances of getting that amount from me are basically the exact same.
What you should do is you should go violate it and then cut him a check. Here's your $5 million check, man.
Exactly.
Let me know if you need a couple more checks like that, and I'll cut them. Well, let's talk about the rest of the voice band and your musical director, Paul Merkovich. Given the wide variety of genres you guys have to cover and the sheer volume of material you have to learn often very quickly, it's clearly not an easy gig. Did you guys have to audition, or did he just round up the players that he knew were up to that challenge?
You know what? I would say that this is a band that has worked together in great part. First of all, I don't know if you announced the names of the members, but I'll go ahead and tell you. So it's Paul Merkovich, and then our bass player is Sasha Krivtsov, and our guitar player is Hafa Moreira, and we have an auxiliary multi-instrumentalist, does everything. He's a keyboard player, but he covers all the gaps.
Nice.
Named Eric Daniels. And, we have all worked in different contexts with one another for several years now. I began playing with Sasha when we both toured with Vanessa Carlton back in maybe 2003 or 2002, something like this. And then I reconnected with Sasha when we worked together on Rockstar. And so the Rockstar House Band was, Rockstar was a show that was on CBS in 05, 06. And it was another sort of singing competitive reality show. And so Paul Merkovich was the musical director on that show. I was the drummer, and that was my first time meeting Paul and working with him. Sasha was the bass player. Hafa was the guitar player. And so there was a multi-instrumentalist on that show named Jim O'Gorman. But the core four members there have basically gone on, and that same unit did toured with Paul Stanley together, worked with Cher in Vegas together, have done numerous sessions together. And so Paul, to his credit, is an extremely loyal guy. And so it has just so happened that unit sort of came together at that point in like 05 or so, and we have done a large amount of work together as a unit. Eric and Paul knew each other from their work with, I can't remember the artist, but they had worked together with an artist in the past as well. So, like I said, to his credit, Paul is very, very, very loyal, and he has found a unit that works really very, very well.
Exactly.
And so when people think of him, and he thinks of my band, this is the unit that is, and so we've.
So it was like just a given. He said, "Okay, I've got this job, the voice. Well, I just bring the band." He didn't even really sound like he didn't need a second thought.
I also just needed to add that we have a guitar player that joins us during the live rounds named Dave Barry, and similarly, Dave Barry has a long-standing relationship with Paul and Sasha and myself because Dave Barry was a part of the Cher band that did, the Vegas run that I was a part of, but then he's also been part of Cher's band with Paul for years and years prior to that. So, and they also worked together, I believe, on Janet Jackson. So Paul is very, very loyal and has definitely a core group of, sort of his go-to guys, which I am very fortunate and proud to be a part of, and I think that we all are.
Well, we were talking about blind auditions and how that's followed by the battle rounds. So let's talk about the battle rounds. At this point, the coaches choose two players from their teams and pit them against each other in a duet, and then the coach also picks the song they have to sing. These performances have an interesting dynamic in that while they're trying to eliminate their counterpart, it's also to their mutual benefit to make each other look good. After these duets are performed, the coach has to decide which singer they want to keep and which one they're willing to let go. And this last season, they added a twist. Now opposing coaches can steal a singer that gets let go, which adds another dimension to the show for the singers, the coaches, and the audience. For the singers, it means a second chance to stay on the show. For the coaches, it means having to be extra careful about who they cut because it's a decision that can come back to haunt them. And for the audience, it means a chance to see one of their favorites stick around a little longer. And I'll bet all those competitors who got cut in the battle rounds of the first two seasons are pretty bummed that they didn't have that option, in those seasons. You don't have to answer this if you think it's a conflict of interest, but after seeing all four coaches work with their artist up close for so long, if you were a contestant on the show, which coach would you want to work with?
Oh, wow. Isn't that an interesting question? Well, which coach would I want to work with? I would have to think about myself personally and who I would vibe with. Now, it's tough to answer that question.
Well, I know you have to work with these people, so I don't want to cause any trouble.
Yeah.
Well, let me back it up and ask you this. What would you say are the strengths and weaknesses of each of the four coaches?
There you go. That's a question that's fun to answer. The beauty of I'll tell you what the strengths and weaknesses are. That's good. That's good. I think I'm picturing them left to right, sitting in my in my head.
Sure, that's fine.
And so, starting from the left with Adam, I think that Adam, his strength is that he really obsesses on the right choices at the right time for people in terms of the song. And this is not to say that the other coaches don't do that, but the other coaches sometimes have a different reason. Their reasoning for choosing things is different, whereas I really think that he tries to really pinpoint particular moves to make with particular artists at particular times for particular reasons. And I also think that he has less of a type. In other words, I think that Adam may hear, and maybe this is just part of his strategy for how he approaches the show, but I think that he may hear something that piques his interest or something that causes him to, quote unquote, turn his chair in a gospel R&B singer or in a rapper or in a country singer or in an indie, off the beaten path kind of singer. And he can hear things through multiple genres, And so I think that those are some of his strengths. CeeLo's strength, as far as I'm concerned, is he has no boundaries. There's nothing too crazy or far out or adventurous or creative that he won't do. Like, if he sees it as a strong play or something creative or something that's going to have artistic merit or value, he'll go for it. And the beautiful thing about him is he is very much that way, He's the guy. Well, I mean, if you've watched the show, his wardrobe on the show is.
I think you summed it up with no boundaries.
Yeah. Exactly. His wardrobe on the show is indicative of his philosophical approach to life. If you understand what I'm saying, it's
right,
like
he's beyond eclectic. He
really is.
He'll take football shoulder pads and put like road warrior spikes on him and just say, "Who cares?" Right.
And that's an amazing thing. So if I'm an artist, the advantage of working with Adam is I know that the only person on the planet who's going to pour over my decisions more than me is him. So that's great. If I'm an artist, I want to work with CeeLo because I know that if I walk in there and I go, I've got this great idea, I want to walk out on stage on stilts, and then I'm going to pull out a big confetti cannon, but it's not going to be confetti, it's going to be marshmallows, and it's going to go across the whole audience, and all the while I'm going to be juggling, and I'm going to sing this song. CeeLo's going to go, yeah!
And let's skip down the line to Blake, and he's going to go, no.
Yeah, Blake is going to go, no, because Blake is definitely not about production. He's not the guy who's going to sit there and go, let's get 12 dancers and confetti cannons and whiz-bang action. He's the guy who goes, I want, he finds this pureness, if that's a word, this pure quality in his singers. That's what really speaks to him. And he's very, very sincere. I mean, I say this with the utmost respect. He's a good old boy. He is so exactly what you see. And it's so refreshing to see that and to get that. It's really, really nice. And he's funny, and he's he's just a good dude. He's just a really good dude. And so I feel like the qualities that he imbues as an artist and as a singer and a performer are exactly what he looks for. He tends to skew slightly towards country artists, although, ironically, he won a season ago with Jermaine Paul.
Yeah.
Who is anything but a country artist.
What I was going to say is he seems to be tuned into what America wants because of the 3 seasons he's won 2.
Exactly. No, he really, I mean, I believe strongly that beyond the sheen of it being a reality show and lights and glitz and flash and all of it, beyond that, I really believe that sincerity and a genuine nature and a genuine desire to make something as good as it can be and to take pride in it really comes across. And so that's really why I really think that Adam, CeeLo, Blake, I mean, they're tops. You can't ask for more.
Which leaves us with?
Yeah, Christina. You know, I mean, I gotta say that she, again, in lockstep with the other coaches, she does tend towards that which she is.
Right.
You know, I mean, there have been rare exceptions. There have been exceptions. I mean, Lindsay Paveo, who was one of her contestants a season ago, was not a, vocal acrobatics person.
Right.
But generally speaking, vocal acrobatics, it's her strength, and it's what her strength is at coaching.
Yeah.
And so if I am a, vocal gymnast
Yeah.
or vocal acrobat, then she's the coach. If I want to be able to sing, all those crazy lines and everything.
That type of singing, the melismatic singing's come up on this show a few times, But, it kind of makes sense because your show has coaches, not judges. So when she sees someone, she knows, I got to work with the person. Well, I know how to sing with this melisma, take one syllable and stretch it into 16 notes. That's what this other person does.
Right.
So, it seems like she would do that. But as far as a strategy for winning the show, maybe not so much. But she certainly knows a lot about singing. And all four of the coaches get a lot of appreciation from the people they work with, even the ones that don't work out. There's not any negativity on the show. It's very positive. A lot of times you see people acting devastated when they lose on any kind of reality show. They're just like, oh, my dream is gone. These people on The Voice seem to be like, well, thank you for the constructive criticism. I appreciate and respect your opinion. Thanks for not just saying get out of here. Thanks for telling me specifically why so I can work on it. That's why your show, I think, is a cut above the other ones in the genre.
Well, and I can't even add to that. I mean, I think that you have crystallized that very eloquently because that really does, I think, go a long way. No one is on the show for humiliation factor.
No.
No one is on the show for being made fun of or being ridiculed or belittled or, made to feel like they can't achieve, which is really refreshing.